Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. We start by seeing a man wanting to buy a tombstone, accompanied by his dog. His name is Ambrose, and he is in search of buying the best headstone for a grave. The seller is insensitive in giving him a discount. Even though he is a war veteran, he receives no discount. After this, Ambrose leaves the place and departs with his son, Will. Inside the car, we discover that Ambrose is blind and a widower. The veteran jokes that dying is expensive, so he hasn't chosen a new headstone for his deceased wife yet, as they are too expensive. Despite being blind, Ambrose has good hearing and asks Will to put down the phone and drive carefully. They go to a condominium to look at some houses, and before they enter, Ambrose's dog seems suspicious of the place, not finding it safe. Moments later, they go to the new house, and upon entering, Ambrose notices marks on the wall, as if 3 sharp claws made them. Soon he finds something on them, resembling an animal's claw. Later, he goes out to meet the new neighbors and talks to a cheerful lady named Dolores. He takes the opportunity to ask her what was that he had found in the house, and she just says it seemed like a claw. Will approaches them and tells his father not to walk without the guide dog. Then they return to the house, and sometime later, the moving truck arrives with their furniture. Later, some women enter the house to welcome the new resident to the area. Mrs. Emma and her companions Gloria and Clarissa bring cupcakes for him, but Ambrose says he can't eat sweets. They are startled when he shows his gun for personal defense, but find out he is an army veteran who went blind after the war. Ambrose then dismisses the women. Moments later, he feeds his beautiful guide dog, for which he has great affection. Next door lives Mrs. Dolores, who soon goes to answer the phone and talk to her daughter, saying everything is fine. Dolores remembers her commitment the next day, but the daughter talks about already having something on her schedule. Suddenly outside, something big moves around the house, unknown to Dolores. Meanwhile, Ambrose goes to his bedroom. He hears a strange noise coming from outside and wonders what it could be. Mrs. Dolores, still on the phone, also hears it but does not go out to check. Suddenly we see the shadow of an unknown creature approaching the house door, and hearing something knocking on the door, Dolores turns to see and notices that something is trying to enter, which scares her. Ambrose, realizing that his son is not at home, comes down from the bedroom to the living room and approaches the wall that is connected to Dolores's house, from where he hears the noises. Meanwhile, Dolores tries to hide behind the wall, but suddenly a humanoid and furry creature manages to destroy the door. The monster approaches the lady and roars at her, and then Ambrose only hears screams of despair and the sound of things breaking. In the next scene, we see that the poor lady was brutally killed by the creature. Ambrose bangs on the wall calling for Dolores, but the enraged creature crashes against the wall, pushing the man back. Ambrose gets up, confused and frightened. Soon his dog runs towards a terrifying roar. The veteran follows his animal and, not realizing that the creature is in the room, the well-trained dog attacks the strange intruder, fighting against it while Ambrose tries to load his gun. As soon as he loads the gun with bullets, the monstrosity lets out a terrifying roar and flees, destroying one of the windows. Then, Ambrose checks on his dog, and unfortunately, the wounds are severe and are causing a lot of agony for the dog. In a gesture of mercy, Ambrose sacrifices his animal to end its suffering. At dawn, the 2 men transporting Ambrose's move arrive at the residence and are astonished to see the entrance to Ambrose's and Mrs. Dolores's houses destroyed. One of them enters the house and looks for the gentleman, soon finding him holding his dog. Later we see Will and his wife Anne. Ambrose talks to the veterinarian, where she asks what could have attacked the animal. Ambrose says the monster was large and smelled like a dog. The doctor says the police receive a call a month from the gated community, which is at the end of the city, and then the forest begins. Ambrose thinks a bit and realizes that something similar has happened before, asking the doctor if she believes a dog could have done such harm to his animal and Mrs. Dolores, but she has no answers. The family leaves the hospital with Ambrose carrying his deceased animal to bury it, and says she will take Ambrose to buy another guide dog, but he refuses, saying he will take care of himself. Will takes him home, and upon their arrival, the police are at the late Dolores's house. Ambrose goes to talk to the officers, who were conversing with Dolores's pregnant daughter, Victoria. She soon leaves, disbelieving what happened to her mother. The officers, talking with Ambrose, say that they don't need his statement, as they are sure it was an animal attack. They also mention that animal attacks are common in areas near forests and advise him to stay indoors at night and to walk with someone during the day. Moments later, Ambrose is digging a grave for his deceased dog when Anne approaches and mourns his loss. She also mentions that strange things happen especially during the full moon, which is when the police have to visit the area, leaving Ambrose thoughtful. Afterwards, Will takes him inside to eat something, and after the meal, Ambrose rocks in his chair, anxious about something. His son tells him to call if he needs anything, but Ambrose oddly remarks that nothing will happen that night, as the full moon was the day before, so it won't appear again until next month. Ambrose's thought leaves his son confused, even thinking that his father's mind is getting disturbed, but he leaves him alone in the house. A few days later, on the sidewalk, Ambrose meets the local mailman, who, noticing bloodstains, learns that Ambrose's dog was killed. The veteran asks how far the bloodstains go, and the mailman leads him to where they end. They arrive near Gloria's house front. Seeing him approach, she opens the door and invites him in. Gloria mentions her husband is at home, having just cut his hair. She says she'll fetch water for him. Soon Ambrose, hearing heavy breathing, follows it to a room where he finds the bed adapted for John, who needs the equipment to live. Gloria comes to them and takes Ambrose out, thinking he was going to harm her husband. She then leads him outside, saying she has a lot to do that day and they could talk more another time. Later, we see Ambrose digging a hole when two policemen approach him. They say Ambrose is causing fear among people, and they are worried since another body was found a few blocks from where they are. The officers still believe it was an animal attack, but on the other hand, they ask Ambrose to stay within his property. Ambrose takes the chance to ask about a pamphlet in the mail, and the officer says it's an invitation to the church, mentioning a bus picks people up on Sunday. Accepting the invite, when Sunday comes, Ambrose waits for the bus, and upon its arrival, he boards to go to the church. The veteran sits next to James, a local resident living near the forest, and on the other side is Father Roger. Ambrose, having a keen sense of smell, identifies that Roger smokes, and the priest, a bit embarrassed, claims he has quit but ends up coughing, proving otherwise. After arriving at the church, where Father Roger is the speaker, a dog barking down the street makes the priest uncomfortable, and he asks his assistant to close the door. After the sermon, Ambrose finds Father Roger smoking. They talk a bit about war times, where Ambrose doesn't have many good memories. Later, back at home, Ambrose counts the steps to navigate his residence and knows where things are located. He also returns to doing physical exercises to stay vigorous at his age. The next Sunday, going to church, the ladies talk to James, saying they are uncomfortable with Ambrose's presence on the bus, especially Gloria, who thinks she witnessed the man trying to turn off her husband's medical equipment. James, wanting to be a good man, says he will arrange another transport for him. As days pass, Ambrose continues to familiarize himself with the rooms of his residence, and exercises become part of his routine, as well as training with his shovel, which he uses as a crutch. One day, Ambrose goes to the city to buy a headstone, and finally chooses one. He goes to sign the documents and pay for the artifact and asks the owner where there is a gun shop. The man reluctantly tells him the location. Returning home, Will asks his father where his money is, so he can deposit it in the bank, where it's safer. However, Ambrose says he can take care of things and won't talk about the money. As the old man continues to dig the hole, he notices someone approaching him. Ambrose then grabs his shovel and, sensing the scent of the hooded stranger, hits them with the shovel, and runs to his house to get his gun. He quickly goes out to confront the stranger, but the unknown had already left. However, the hood is left behind, and Ambrose picks it up. Later, the police come to his residence and inform him that nothing was found on the hood, just a smell of cigarettes. They also report that some dogs have been found dead, and no neighbors saw anything. On the next Sunday, the bus drives past Ambrose's street, leaving him behind. However, James arrives with a car to take the veteran. Inside the car, Ambrose asks James how long he has been helping the community and how long he has known Father Roger, to which James replies it has been over 20 years. After the meeting, Ambrose meets with Father Roger for a bit more conversation. Soon, James comes to take him home. On the way, James begins to have a breathing crisis and inhales in a strange way, leaving Ambrose reflecting on it, as it resembles the whispers from the night of the attack. Later, while resting, Ambrose hears someone at the door and, suspicious, grabs his gun to see who it is. Fortunately, it is just the headstone delivery man. Ambrose asks him to take him back to town, to the place the seller had told him about. He arrives at West's shop and says he came to do business with him. Ambrose states he needs the man to make silver bullets for his weapons. West says he can make them in less than 2 hours and mentions that someone asked for almost the same thing last year. The scene shifts, and we see James applying medication to strange deep scratch marks on his body. Later, while delivering some pamphlets into the mailboxes, he sees Ambrose arriving with a bag, recognizes West's brand, and becomes fearful. Later that night, Will arrives at his father's house and is surprised to find Ambrose pointing a gun at him. Will identifies himself, then his father calms down, mentioning he was hiding because he had made a protection plan and that the next day is a full moon, possibly leading to another tragic event. Will approaches his father and announces that Anne is pregnant, asking to have the child with her family around, so they are moving. Ambrose tells his son to live their lives while stating he'll be fine. Will, seeing his father's indifference to the news, leaves, leaving his father alone, but this doesn't deter Ambrose. In the early hours at Clarissa's house, she and her husband are awakened by noises from the living room. They find James sitting on the couch, appearing fearful, and asking the couple to pray for him. They start praying, but James begins to smile cunningly and suddenly bites Clarissa's hand, causing her to scream. In the morning, the police search for James at his residence, but soon we see him going to Emma. He asks to hold her hand, expressing how much he likes her and has wanted to say it for a long time. Suddenly, he bites and tears off part of her arm, then leaves her screaming in pain. The scene changes, and we see Father Roger going to Ambrose's house to talk a bit more about life. After brief advice, the priest leaves. Knowing he will go to James, Ambrose decides to follow him. Moments later, we see the priest arriving at James's residence, and hearing screams from inside the house, he runs to see what is happening and finds James cutting himself, saying it is punishment for himself. The priest appears to know the man's story, mentioning he gave him the rosary and necklace to help, but James, looking up at the sky, says it didn't work. The night arrives, and in the meantime, Gloria contacts the police about the whereabouts of James, who bit not only her but several neighbors. Meanwhile, the priest and James arrive home, and James says he tried to contain the evil but no one believed him, and now he needs absolution before it's too late. Soon, James's wounds instantly heal, and he reveals he hunted the beast in the forest and killed it, but it wounded him, thus passing the curse to him. James says the priest must kill him before he kills him. It's a full moon night, but Roger says he won't do such harm, yet James begins to transform into a terrifying beast in front of him. Ambrose starts hearing noises and barking from all directions, and at that moment, James is overtaken by the evil within his body, revealing the monstrous beast to the priest who, frightened, runs to his car. Unfortunately, when starting the car, Roger is surprised by the beast in front of him, which jumps on the windshield, breaking it, thus killing the priest. Ambrose goes to Gloria's house, but no one answers. Then he goes to the bedroom and finds her husband beheaded. Suddenly a creature approaches him from behind, but he quickly knocks it down with a shovel strike. However, he is injured in the action. Ambrose immediately returns to his house and bandages his wounds. He calls his son, but it goes to voicemail, so he leaves an apology and passes on a message to him. Then the veteran puts on his old military uniform, ready to face the evil that's on the loose. He reloads his gun and takes a hearing aid device. Meanwhile, the condominium's gatekeeper sees the werewolf monster on the cameras and, terrified, leaves his post running. Ambrose throws a bloodstained shirt onto the street, waiting for the beast to sniff it out. Using the hearing aid, the veteran listens for the steps and noise of the creature, but discovers it's not just one. The people James bit have also turned into werewolf beasts. Ambrose aims his gun and hits one of the beasts in the chest, killing it. The other creatures run, and one trying to attack him through the window is killed with a headshot. Ambrose goes downstairs after the other beasts. Soon one attacks him from behind, but he quickly dodges and tries to shoot at the monster, but ends up injuring his foot. Fortunately, he drives the werewolf away and shoots him, killing him. Outside, we see that one of the beasts has returned to human form, being one of the ladies. The werewolf, angry at the loss, charges at Ambrose. He fights the monster and, going to the living room, grabs his shotgun, shoots the creature in the head, killing it. He positions himself to try to find the direction of the other werewolf, but suddenly the phone rings. It's his son who has arrived at the condominium's gate. His father doesn't answer the phone to not give away his position to the beast, which is at the grave of the deceased dog. However, Will decides to jump the fence and go to his father's house. Ambrose, who had prepared a trap, drops the tombstone on the werewolf. Unfortunately, this does not kill the beast, which soon comes out of the hole and goes after the veteran. The two of them fight, and Ambrose loses his shovel. The beast knocks him down and bites him on the shoulder, and to not die, the man tries to prevent the evil from harming him further. Ambrose takes his shovel broken in half and injures the monster's eyes, blinding it, and then he shoots the beast in the chest, finally killing it. Moments later, the wounded war veteran sits in the rocking chair of his house, relieved that everything is over. However, when Will approaches his house, he finds a dead woman and one of the beasts giving its last breaths, then quickly runs to where his father is. Unfortunately, upon arrival, he finds him lifeless. Days later, we see Will and burying old Ambrose, honoring the man he was, and for the sacrifice he made for the greater good.